Hi, everybody. It's the Week in the Tackle podcast, the podcast where we get together on a weekly basis and tackle things in the world of football and or soccer that we thought were interesting. And breathe. I'm Tom Rennie, Sirius XMFC presenter, TalkSport international editor. Alongside me is MLS legend, top broadcaster, US MNT hardcore, MLS After Darker, and a man whose face is insanely smooth. If you're watching on YouTube, there is no filter. That's just his face. It's Brian Dunseth. Hey, buddy, you all right?
I'm great, Rennie. I don't know if you know that Zoom has different variables when it comes to this filter that I'm using right now. I'm in the young 30s phase of my filter usage. It could look drastically different by the end of the show, but the grays are coming in, my man. Grays are coming in. I'm not too happy about it.
I'm trying to turn off this OAP filter on mine, but it's not. I'm pressing all the buttons. I'm pressing all
You
the
look like a
buttons.
UAP, not a UOP.
Someone told me, so I've been doing some shows recently on Sirius with Adrian Heath, who's absolutely brilliant, right? Just so good. So great to spend some time with him. But I've got to mention this to him. I've not mentioned this to him yet, but I will do. Don't listen to this. But he's 62. And we've had a couple of sort of guests on. So I'm in my late 30s. I'm still not 40, honest. And he said a couple of times to guests, well, people of our generation. And like we don't know each other that well, and I don't want to say anything as
You
yet.
haven't told him yet. You haven't broken it.
I'm like 25 years younger than you. Like, do I not? I mean, I don't look it, so I can see where the confusion comes from. But
can I tell you, I had something similar happen to me with that?
Yeah.
So John Strong, who's like the lead U.S.
I know John.
World Cup one. Yeah. So John, so this goes back maybe like 13 years ago. He was calling the games for the Portland Timbers. We both started calling games for NBC Sports when NBC Sports had the MLS coverage in conjunction with the Premier League coverage. And I'm on the road with him very first time, two just chaps getting to know each other. And I use this analogy reference of Chips, California Highway Patrol, Chips. And dun 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 dun, like John and Ponch are rolling on their Harleys and vroom vroom like through the California highways. And he goes, and I was like, yeah, dude, John and Ponch, Chips.
Yeah.
And he goes,
Obs.
I've never heard of it. And I was like, the fuck are you talking about? Sorry, Tim. And he goes, how old do you think I am? I go, my age, obviously, completely bald. He's one of the balds. And he goes, I'm 25 years old. I think I was like 35 at the time. And I literally, this is my reaction. This is my reaction. Ready? I go, shut the fuck up. Sorry, Tim. And he goes, no, I'm 25. I'm 10 years younger than you. I go, no fucking chance. Sorry, Tim. And he goes, no, yeah, I'm 10 years younger. So as he's gotten married and grown his family, his young family, it's been great. But like to this point, I'll always joke around. I'll go, like something will happen out of the blue. I'll just go, yeah, Chips. And we'll burst out laughing because he's
like, shut up, you old bastard.
Yeah.
Whatever you are, whatever you
literally made me feel so old. And I was like, but you're my age. And he's like, nah, man, I'm not your.
No.
So you are now welcome. You've been introduced to the world of Inchy, and Adrian's great, dude. I've known him since his days of being in Austin before he went down to Orlando City. Salt of the earth, incredible human being, great guy to grab a glass of wine with. Incredible stories, obviously.
Oh, so good. Like we were just chatting the other day, and he was like, "Yeah, I was with Unai at Villa the other week." It was like, "What? What were you doing?" Yeah, I was just there for a week. Yeah, great people. It's like, oh, okay, I can't get in there. I'm trying to talk to them, and they obviously don't. Why would they care about me?
Yeah.
And they're just like they're having dinner with them. So amazing, just amazing. Anyway, look, more of that to come another time. Also, I should mention as well that in that story I came out young, but the other day I had a new producer start work for me, and he was born. I think the year I started university, so that made me want to vomit blood.
I'm telling you, it only gets worse, dude.
It's not great. It's not great.
And really, you want to know what the worst is? I had this woman come up to me in a bar and be like,
"Here we go.
I was there when you scored the first goal for Real Salt Lake back in 2005."
In my dad's balls. Yeah. Is that what it was?
Close. I go, oh, dude, that's awesome. She goes, yeah, dude, I was like 5 years old. I was like, fuck you. Sorry,
painful.
But she was like a grown-ass, beautiful woman and like at a bar. And she was just like, yeah, I was 5. It's inappropriate.
Anyway,
Don't
let's
need
move on
that.
as soon as we possibly can from this
Yeah.
miserable conversation. A few things to talk about this week. I do want to talk about the FA Cup and a little bit of my. I'll do the usual thing, but I do think it's. We have new listeners all the time, so you might not have heard it. Plus, I have a new kind of twist on it this week. I'm always
Really?
twisting. Yes,
I'm excited.
yeah.
Okay.
Not really, sort of. But it's a bit about March Madness, so you'd be interested.
I don't like March
I'd
Madness.
like to ask you. Yeah, but you live in America, you know it's happening, as
Don't
opposed to me, who doesn't.
Yeah.
I want to do a little bit of Crystal Palace if we can. I'll find out where you were MLS this weekend, and we've got some heroes and villains to come as well. So that is all coming up on the show today. Let's start with the FA Cup, and I want to start with Manchester City because they annoyingly are through to the semi-finals of the competition. ABC is my whole ethos for the FA Cup this year. Anyone but City. And yet City got themselves through, beating Bournemouth this weekend, leaving us with a semi-final lineup to come in April, end of April, of Palace against Aston Villa and Nottingham Forest against Man City. Those games at Wembley, all being well, I'll be there for both, depending on the weekend. So we'll hopefully be able to bring you some stuff from Wembley on both of those days. City last won the FA Cup in 2023 with the win over Man United. Forest, last time they won it was 1959. Villa, 57. Crystal Palace have never won the FA Cup. I was there when they went 1-0 up against Louis van Gaal's Army a couple of years ago and then went on to lose. Jay Lings with the goal and all of that. But it's Man City. Can we still do it?
Enjoy the mince pies and the wine.
Louis van Gaal's Army. Anyway, I don't know why I sound like an extra in Lord of the Rings, but there we go.
It's close.
I wanted to talk about Man City because there was a couple of interesting notes from their win over Bournemouth. Firstly, what a shame. Bournemouth had never been in the semi-final. Anyway, 1-0 down. They go on to win it by 2-1. Second half, they were just massively on top. Could have won it more convincingly in the end. There was two things I wanted to talk about. Number one was this line about Guardiola post-match saying, we showed heart and soul. We recovered our soul. There was something we'd lost and now we've got it back, which I thought was really, really interesting. Because if you watch City in recent times, even when they won, it sort of felt a bit, it felt loveless. Yeah, I think the word in soul was really interesting. Whereas I don't know if they did get it back here, but he said that we've been talking as a group, as a playing staff, as a coaching staff, me personally, about recapturing something that was lost in terms of those legendary players. And he talked about Kevin De Bruyne, Silva, Gundogan, and whatnot. Danny, give us a view on what you've seen with Man City in the last 3 or 4 months. And did you see the soul again this weekend that had been missing?
I agree with you. I thought it was really fascinating that was the terminology he chose to use because we've, I think on multiple occasions, again, I kind of did this deep dive today on Counterattack when we were recording it with Miola on Sirius XM. Because when I saw the result, I got in my truck and I was listening to Talk Sport, and I'm not sure who the analyst was, but that first 45 minutes, he was just crushing City. And he was kind of implying that Pep was wrong with the way that he was going about it, from the tactics and the motivation, all these different things. And then when I got into the house and I put it on my laptop, I was listening to John Champion, and I can't remember who the analyst was. And the game just felt different. It looked different than everything that I was hearing being described on the radio. And the second half was certainly different. You know, the goal from Erling Haaland after the misses comes off injured. Marmoush 2 minutes later makes it, 2-1 final and blah, blah, blah. But today I kind of did a deeper dive and I went back and I was starting to think, was it the November window or was it the October window? And it was coming off of the October window, but it was September 22nd. The loss against Arsenal was when Rodri popped his ACL. So they kept winning up until that international window. And it was right at the end of October, going into November, that they had this horrific run of form. And going into that international window, I think it was 5 consecutive losses. And since then, you had kind of these sputtering restarts where they put together 1, 2, 3 games in a row, and then all of a sudden get smashed by Arsenal or get smashed by United, or even lose to Tottenham Hotspur and Big Ange Postecoglou. So in moments in which, like, I'm wondering from Pep Guardiola's informational conversation to us about soul and all of this stuff. I mean, the simple reminder is also they spent over 300 million in the window. I mean, they're you go back these last 2 years, it's close to 600 million spent. Now they've generated 250 million on outgoing players specific to Julian Alvarez, but also a lot of academy homegrown products being churned through for 20 to 25 million. even Cole Palmer going for 40 million, which is probably going to go down as one of the best uh, inter Premier League moves for value from cost perspective in the last 5 to 10 years when it's all said and done, because Cole Palmer is going to go on to have an extraordinary career, and at 40 million, that's nothing, pennies on the dollar. But again, that's bigger conversation to academy players. You get to keep all that money, profit and sustainability versus maybe a Julian Alvarez where you paid and blah, blah, blah. You only get to spend or save a certain amount. But the reality is they're spending more than everybody else. So for them to get their soul back, it's less about the quality of the performance. It's more about, I think, the ingenuity of recapturing the mentality of the team. Because maybe in these last 2 months, it would be almost forgivable to understand, if that makes sense, why City's collapsing or inability to not win games against Bournemouth. Because if this was October, September, early October, and you're going to say to me, quarterfinal at Bournemouth, what's it going to be for an FA Cup performance from a Man City? I'm going to be like, of course, it's going to be like 3-4-0 on the road. Bournemouth won't be able to deal with the depth of that squad, not the quality of that side, not the sweat equity of this side. So there's just a weird balance. I don't know if we're ever going to be able to truly comprehend in real time what's happening. I know we've talked about this multiple occasions here on Week in the Tackle, but the reality is the canaries in the coal mine will sing at some point to tell us exactly what happened, whether that's the inside of former players on their way out or it's those close enough to help us understand. But I found myself, as he's talking, post-match trying to draw a parallel to Jurgen Klopp last year at Liverpool.
Lost the love.
Yeah, and not that he's losing the love, but are the
Klopp
players
say energy? I'm losing out of energy, running out of energy, or something. He said, didn't he?
Yeah, but are the players running out of the energy of Pep? Meaning that the intensity of the squad, you can turn over all of these players and still get Marmouches and whoever you want. But is that cauldron of pressure that he puts on the players for the consistency of performance both on and off the field, does that come at a cost psychologically? And then does that play into rekindling the soul or completely losing the soul of this City group?
I mean, I think some of these guys definitely over the years have sort of grown tired physically and emotionally of working with Guardiola. Raheem Sterling is a massively obvious example.
Leroy Sané.
But there's several that have come out publicly afterwards. Yeah. Sané may be the most obvious one who came out and basically said it to us. But I do think that point you made is really interesting because I have been drawn in by the charm of Pep a little bit with these comments because I think it is interesting and I don't doubt it. And I do want to sort of ask a follow-up on the sort of the love of it all. He talks about being there for your mate and he talks about learning lessons. He talks about recovering the passion. He talks about heart, desire, soul, all these things that maybe had been missing. And maybe they did feel a bit listless and directionless going into some of these games because you're out the Champions League, you're out the title race, no FA Cup real challenges coming up on the horizon a few weeks ago. So you're a bit like, oh, so we're used to playing for everything. We're used to living on a knife edge. And then suddenly, we're sitting in the middle of a spoon and no one's licking us. That was a terrible analogy. I know I pushed it too far, but
nope, it's brilliant. Love it.
You see what I mean? Yeah. But kind of gross. But the point you made is really interesting. Like you're trying to recover your sort of love for your husband or your wife or whatever. And sometimes, it's a big holiday or it's a lovely gift. Like I'm thinking as you're talking about that scene in Love Actually, where Alan Rickman is standing at the counter at Selfridges and Rowan Atkinson is making the gift wrap of the necklace. And he's like, oh, we'll put a sprig of cinnamon in this. And he's like, just wrap the bloody thing, will you? And it's like, yeah, because he spent, he wants a gift for his bit on the side in the end. I don't want to ruin the movie for you. It's been 25 years. Watch it. But it's just sort of a bit like he got the necklace for the wife as opposed to the bit on the side. And he got the Nico Gonzalez and got Marmouche, who looks fantastic. And to be fair, I really thought Kuznetsov scored an own goal whenever Nielsen scored. I still think it was Kuznetsov, but whatever.
No.
It seemed like own goal for Calamity Kuznetsov. But I think that's quite interesting that in the end, what you need is new blood, new ideas, new energy, and a desire to make this thing work. And it's almost like Omar Marmouche is the start of, let's push this tortured analogy even further. It's the start of a fling becoming a proper relationship. But for that, you've got to divorce Kevin De Bruyne so you can start really having sex with Omar Marmouche. Did that work?
the side piece turns into the husband or the wife, depending
Yes.
upon.
But you've got to
But you
divorce the
still got to
wife.
divorce.
He's still dating the
Yeah,
wife. You know what I
yeah.
mean?
No,
Yeah? No?
again, no, I get you.
Where's
I'll
the
buy.
spoon? Where's the spoon is the question.
We just drew like 4 movies together in like one brilliant
Gross.
analogy. That's what you get here on Week in the Tackle. I
That's it.
apologize. Um, God, where was I? Kevin De Bruyne
That's it.
wearing the captain's band
The old wife.
or on the outside. He was more of like a winger at Bournemouth. He was more like a right winger
Yeah.
in this conversation.
Stop having to run so hard, right? In the midfield three. Get up there
Yeah,
and be creative.
yeah. Again, I think it. I think we're on, and this will be similar using the analogy with Klopp and Liverpool, because it will be the same with Trent, and it will, albeit different than Virgil van Dijk and Mo Salah, that there will be kind of these transitional moments where something so significant moves that the power vacuum of the player, the technical ability, and the leadership quota and the personality is out of the room, which leads to someone's got to replace them. And is it ever like for like? Very rarely. Is it
No.
done maybe similar ways, but with different? Absolutely. And specific to Kevin De Bruyne, one of my favorite players in world football in all time. Um, I don't think he is ever going to get the credit he deserves in real time. I think we will respect what he's done throughout the course of his career, but the inability to win a FIFA Golden Ball or win a Ballon d'Or will dictate a different conversation that doesn't include him of being one of the best players of his generation. He will easily be hands down mentioned in some of the best creative attacking phase of players ever, but I don't think he'll ever have that like elite of the elite inclusion we're ultimately involved. And maybe, unfortunately, it's because he's in the generation of Cristiano Ronaldo and Lionel Messi that he's not in that elite of the elite conversation. But whether it's been for Man City or it's been for Belgium, he's one of my favorite players of all time. But it does seem like this year is the reference point of a divorcing of Kevin De Bruyne and Man City. And if he does continue and he chooses to continue, that's great. But it just feels as though even the conversations and the quotes last week with Pep saying, this isn't about me, this is about Kevin, this is about the club, kind of feels like we're kind of getting into those moments. So again, it was a great response. It's still Bournemouth. To your point, I am continuing to devolve into your thinking of how brilliant could this be. Even the Newcastle, again, people are hammering them because it's Carabao Cup, EFL Cup, Gummy Bear Cup, whatever. But just to see the celebration in the city, there's something to be said about that from a supporter's angle. Take away the politicization of what's happening at the club from the ownership side. The fact that, like, to your point, Conference League for West Ham, these are moments for fans, and I almost did want to see whether that's Villa back on the big stage, or it is a Fulham or a Crystal Palace, or we are seeing a Nottingham Forest continuing to evolve into what Marinakis wants to be a superpower. If City would have been there, I think it would have been that much more fascinating in a lot of ways. But again, I think that's a conversation probably for you to do your ABCs. Toss it back over to you. Go for it.
Something like that. Well, yeah, let me do it now, because I've got a Newcastle bit for you later as well, which I quite like. But like, I think about this all the time, right? If I could pick a dream job for myself, it would be, actually, I can't say that on the podcast, but the second dream job that I would pick would be, it was Cadbury's cream egg taster, by the way, if you're interested. Amazing things. Just, how do you eat yours? But like, they're so good. Do you get them Cadbury's cream eggs in America? Oh my God, incredible.
Just the
Fondant
texture
in the egg.
Once you take a pop and the texture in your mouth,
bite the top, suck out the cream, enjoy the chocolate. Family show. Anyway, my second job that I would love to have will be scheduler of all football. Now, I know this would run into problems because there are different countries and time zones and whatnot, so it could never be perfect. But what I would have Bit like you're having in America with sort of Leagues Cup at the moment, bit like you're having in the basketball with the March Madness and all that sort of stuff, is I know you don't care, but America cares, right?
Yeah,
America tells me they care.
I
The
guess
numbers
so.
are,
Yeah.
the viewing figures are actually insane for non-professional sport. Like, it's ludicrous. I don't understand it. I'm certainly not going to fucking watch it. Sorry, Tim.
Oh,
But I know
that
lots
deal
of
with
people
Max
are.
Bretos. Yeah.
Unbearable talking about the basketball, I'm sure. But what I would do is just wipe it all clean. Take the whiteboard like you're starting a comedy for the first time. Just clear it and then start again with a new board, like I'm writing SNL for this weekend or whatever, right? Or a sketch show. And I'd have the board and I'd be like, right, where is it going to be? So we start the season with a run of domestic football up until the start of January. That gives you half a season in Europe, no cup competitions where you can just play league. And then you have a bit like Germany, you have the, I think they call it Meisterschale or whatever, where you're the half season champions. Then you have a January break. What do you do in that January break? You do the FA Cup. You do the FA Cup in full from third round to final, and you have all the preliminaries before that. And so they're non-clashing games to qualify for the third round where the competition starts properly. The nomenclature of the competition's a bit weird. Like third round is not really the third round or whatever, but fine. So you get to third round, and it's third round, midweek, fourth round, weekend, fifth round, midweek, quarterfinals, weekend, semi-final, week break, build up to the final, have the final. I'm even open to the conversation of the final being at the weekend, whatever. But you have a full focus on this competition. And the reason it came into my mind as well this weekend is that usually they've had to kind of mush around the quarterfinals a bit into other Premier League weekends previously or into midweek. They were doing last time out. But this was the last proper weekend. You got 4 FA Cup games that got full focus. And like I was, so I wasn't working this weekend, but I went to a couple of family events and I was chatting to my nephew who's, what is he now, 15, 16. And he was like, oh, did you watch the Forest Brighton game? Do you know how many times that comes up for us before this? Never. We talk about West Ham or we talk about the big game or we say, do you watch the Man United game or whatever? Wasn't it funny? But this wouldn't come up. But it did because it had focus and eyeballs, terrestrial TV over here. So everyone's watching Brighton against Forest. Plus, we had the international break beforehand. So suddenly, this football mad nation is kind of starved of top level stuff.
Yeah,
I know there's National League and League One going on, which is great. But this is where a lot of sort of national focus is. There's a conversation going on about it. It was all about focus. And then looking at the FA Cup semi-finals end of April, these are great games. I'm super excited about them. I'd like to go. I'd like to do the commentary on site of both if possible. Trouble is, there's 7 Premier League games that weekend. So it's going to be lost somewhere in the ether. It's likely at least one will be the same time as the Premier League games. And I just think that giving it its own focus gives this competition a new energy, a new aura, a new raison d'etre. And I love that about it. And then we remember it, and you remember the last round, and like the quarterfinal being a big story. Like I'd forgotten about Ryan Yates scoring the equaliser against Ipswich, that going to penalties. This one went to penalties, and only when the commentator said, "Oh, the last 2 went to penalties," did I think, "Oh yeah, of course it did." Isn't that an amazing story? Imagine that happened Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday.
Yeah.
3 shootouts in a row. I wanted to have that focus. I want all the competitions to have that focus, and they will rightly be lost if they go up against Champions League, Europa League, Premier League, and I would do the same for Coppa del Rey. I'd do the same for Coppa Italia. I'm really starting an international war here. What am I, JD Vance? Hey, hey, hey. Hey, I read the news.
Yeah, you do.
But like, I just think that it would be fantastic. And like, everyone's against it. It's not going to happen. But then also more broadly, you come back to Premier League, you end the season, you can fully focus on that. And then you've got the international season. So I'd end the season in April. You have 6 weeks of international football. And maybe that goes into the competition the following year. So you could logistically plan for it. But there's ways of giving them their own times. You qualify for one in 1 year. You have the tournament the next year. You qualify for next year. You have the tournament the next year. There's loads of ways of doing it. And everyone tells me, no, we can't do it. So instead, we're going to lose great FA Cup semi-final eyeballs.
Yeah, you do. It does get lost when the reality is that people, unless your team's playing, the casual fan is not going to pay attention. They're going to be paying attention to Premier League because they're going to think there's more jeopardy as opposed to being in the knockout rounds of this tournament. To your point, similarly to what MLS is going to have to do when adopting the year-round schedule, allegedly after the World Cup, is that you're going to have to create a redundancy somewhere. And the redundancy heading into the World Cup for Major League Soccer, for example, is going to be how do you create something that makes sense from January to the end of May that builds into the summer and the World Cup, because then you're going to start following the international calendar. So that if we're mimicking kind of what Liga MX does, you're going to say it's a 6-month window, free for all. Here's going to be a mini tournament, and a winner is going to be declared. Then you go into the summer window of the World Cup. And then as soon as the World Cup's over, you start then completely following the window in whatever, a 10-month cycle that mimics Europe. Now, I know there's going to be weather and travel and artificial surface and grass and all the other things, but there has to be a redundancy somewhere. So I guess if I was to follow your train of thought, I would think the simplicity in doing something like this would be after a World Cup.
Yeah.
If you are going to make these monumental changes, which we are currently seeing monumental changes, whether that be with the Euros, whether that be with the Club World Cup, whether that be with, international travel in some of these games, slap everything against the wall and see what sticks. If you choose to go down this route, I would assume coming off a World Cup. But again, I mean, whether it's what we're seeing with Champions League or what we're seeing with FIFA Club World Cup, there's always new versions of monetization. And as as we always hear Charlie Stilitano reference over on SiriusXM FC, it's about the money, you morons.
Yeah, that is true, but I do think there is money to be made in this scheme. Plus, I know we've got to move on, but Carabao Cup, I get rid of the European team, which I'm always saying,
yeah.
but then let's play some of these games abroad. Let's do it. The Carabao Cup is going to be shut down in the next 10 years. There's no way it's going to survive. Or it's going to be some secondary nonsense competition, even more than it currently
It already is, yeah.
It absolutely is a secondary competition, but I do think you saw how seriously Newcastle took it and how seriously when it comes to semi-finals, everyone sort of takes it. Before that, it is a bit of a, tossed off competition.
Unless you're runaway Premier League title chasers.
That's true as well. Unless you're like 20 points clear, then fine. Yeah. But like I just think we could get rid of those teams and then play those semi-finals and the final in America. Or play them in China, or play them in wherever, Mexico. Play them where there are fans that would go see these games. We could all make some money. Play them in Italy. Play them in Spain. It'd be incredible. And we could do like an exchange. They could be like exchange students. You get Real Madrid, and in return, you get Burnley, I guess. I don't know. I'd work it out. Anyway, if you're enjoying the program, what's wrong with you? But if you're enjoying the program, subscribe on all podcast platforms. So if you're listening on Spotify, please subscribe on Apple and vice versa. And if you're listening to the program, you can watch the program in full on YouTube. Go to our YouTube page and subscribe. And why are you waving? That's weird. I suppose
YouTube people.
Yeah, for those that are watching. But
Spotify
it's also,
people.
It's mainly an audio medium, but it's fine. We should describe these things. But one thing we want you to do is leave a 5-star review, leave a really strong written review, and tell your friends. The best way to spread the word of podcast quality is to tell a friend.
Did that recently. You want to know what I did? I was over at a buddy's house. He had Spotify playing in the music. I grabbed the controller, went into Week in the Tackle, pressed follow, I subscribed to it, so it'll pop up in his feed, and then I did my job for the day. Yeah.
Yes.
Spread the word.
Take a friend's phone, mug a friend, and mug a friend.
Punch him in the nuts.
Punch them in the nuts, figuratively, maybe literally. I don't know what you do with your friends. And subscribe to this podcast on their phones. For me, it'll be fun. Right, a couple of last bits of FA Cup business before we get to MLS and heroes and villains. Just wanted to ask you about Crystal Palace. They fascinate me. They do fascinate me. If you take away, I know this is pathetic, but if you take away the opening 9 games of the season, I think they didn't win in 7, but the opening 9 was a wobble. They have been phenomenal this season. Win after win after win. Incredible away victories, strong home victories. A couple of times they've kind of shanked one, but in general, like the Everton game recently, but the way they play is so interesting. That kind of box formation that Oliver Glasner plays, 3 at the back, 1 up front, 2 in sort of midfield, that sort of square midfield of Wharton and another, and then those 2 drop in, almost a bit like 3 to I'm not going to do it, but like it's really interesting how there's little boxes that pop up all over the field where they control the play. They then sort of unleashed Jean-Philippe Mateta. They've been able to get incredible quality from Iberra Eza. The Eza Sarr goal against Fulham this weekend I thought was brilliant. Absolutely just brilliant move all the way through. They could have won at Fulham by more than the 3 they did. Just a word on what Oliver Glasner could achieve at Crystal Palace. how good their season could have been beyond that early season run. And also, where do they go from here, Crystal Palace? Because, I mean, they could win the FA Cup, and I hope they do. Robbed in 2016 by Louis van Gaal's army. Oliver Glasner, of course, is a Europa League winner in the last couple of years with Eintracht Frankfurt, which,
Yeah.
painful memories for me and all that. Why'd you do it, Cresswell? Why'd you do it? But give us a word on them, their potential. And also, Glasner was a guy. I mentioned to you, was outside TalkSport recently having a couple of drinks 2 hours after Palace won. And he was asked the weekend, "Oh, you been to Wembley before?" And he was like, "Yeah, twice to watch England and once to drop my daughter off to see Taylor Swift." And that's it. So I'm looking forward to it, which I thought was great.
Oh, that definitely wasn't a cheeky pint conversation. I can promise you that. Yeah, listen, I pulled up the statistics because we do this thing where we talk about dominance, we talk about style of play, we all these eyeball markers and all these things and possession, stats, shots, all that stuff. I mean, if you go by here's the stats. You ready for this? It's wild. 71% possession for Fulham. 1.24 goals expected. 16 total shots, 529 passes, 12 corners. They lost 3-0 at home to Crystal Palace, who had 29% possession, 8 total shots, 2 corners. What was the last one? There was 180 passes. Fulham had 529 passes to 180 passes. The reason why I pull this up, first off, the stupidity in possession statistics drives me nuts. Take out fucking possession, sorry, Tim, in your own half. I just want to see possession in the opponent's half. I want to see.
Absolutely.
It just drives me crazy. Like, here's the right back playing to the center back who plays if you did Harry Maguire's statistical touches, never would he touch the ball in the attacking phase of play.
Can I just say this? Not to rag on Aaron Cresswell for the second time in the program, but there was some stat the other day. West Ham lost 2-0 at home, and it was like Aaron Cresswell completed the most amount of passes for a centre half in the league this season.
He passed it back to a fucking center back every time. Sorry, Tim.
They lost 2-0 at home to Brentford, I think it was, and it was literally to the keeper.
Yeah.
No, that's not something to be proud of, Aaron.
No,
anyway,
no.
sorry.
Just the attacking half. That's just me. But also, by the way, I don't know if you know this, there's a flaw in the XG. Did you know that XG is the same for Lionel Messi's left foot that it is for right foot?
No.
There's no differentiating factor. So if Lionel Messi, by the way, he scored with his right foot the other night.
Yes. What about I'm not sure that's fair. What about for Anthony? Is that the same?
Yeah, well, Anthony in Portland, yes. Anthony at Real Betis, no. So he's also Brazil. But my point being is that, we do these things where we get so caught up and try to play like this is MLS or this is Major League Baseball statistics, all this stuff. It's just like there's something about like winning the game. So the reason why I tell this story is I'm using a reference point for this and the San Diego Columbus Crew game that I did 3 weeks ago. For the first 45 minutes, Wilfred Nancy, Columbus Crew, possession with purpose and structure and bing, boom, bop, bing, boom, all over the place, high press, all this stuff. San Diego couldn't do anything. Literally, Mikey Verish, you know what the halftime speech was? Let's go a little bit more direct. Literally kick the ball up over the back line instead of like, oh, let's find the midfielder, back to the center back, into the midfielder, back to the no, they're like, fuck it, let's play forward. Sorry, Tim. There was 3 chances, breakaway chances, because the high line of Columbus played so high that Andre Dreyer just made a second run, ends up forcing a red card to Amundsen, broke apart the play. They end up going down a man. They end up losing 3 points. They end up with a point on the road. They held on for dear life. But my point being, it's not about touches. It's not about like chance generation. It's about it's just about taking your opportunities and big chances. They had 6 shots on target, 3 big chances. They finished off those 3 chances. That's it. Yeah. That's the game right there. So they're through the next round. The curious nature of this, how do they win the game? In these fine moments, they're doing a great job. And we can say proactive, we can say reactive, we can say in the gray areas, who wants it more, all of these grittiness, desire, tough tackling, all that stuff. And those all come into play, but you can't really like put your finger on it. Like, what is that? How do I say that? I feel like when I watch Palace, there's a spirit talking about the soul, Mikel, with Pep Guardiola and Man City. There's something about this group of players, and I've been a part of these teams where you just say like, F these guys. Sorry, Tim. And that's it. Like that, honestly, when Ray Hudson was my coach in Miami, we had the best team in the league. We ended up spending Supporter Shield. It was September 11th, 2001. Everything went sideways. The playoffs got really complicated. We ended up losing players during the playoffs, red cards, dodginess, anyways, whatever, contracted. But Ray, we would do our due diligence about the other team. And as we went on the field, there was two words. And the two words were, F them. Sorry, Tim. That's it. So as you're walking on the field, it's respect the opponent, but F them. Sorry, Tim. And that was it. And Ray had us flying from the opening whistle because as a spiritual team, we were just like, nah, man, we got you. Didn't matter. We had this mentality, monster mentality. And I feel as though Crystal Palace at times plays bigger than who they are. And this was one of those occasions where you watch them play and they don't deserve to win. They've earned the right to win. And that's when I watched Palace. I watched this. It's similar to what Brighton was a couple of years ago. When I watch them play, they earn the right to play. And I think that it's hard to verbalize what that really means when it's all said and done, because at the end of the day, Palace is a mid-table team, 9th to 14th every single year. They're never going down. They might flirt with something. They might change the manager, but that's just who they are. This year, maybe it's different with Glasner. Two wins and lifting a trophy would be, just an incredible achievement for what Crystal Palace is and always, I guess, has been versus what they want to be going forward.
I do wonder what happens if Oliver Glasner. Like, it shows the pull of the Premier League, that it's the money you moron of the Premier League, that he's gone from Eintracht Frankfurt winning the Europa League, being in the Champions League, and taking the Crystal Palace job. And Crystal Palace have never won the FA Cup. They don't really win things. They're not really a top half finisher. There's not a great deal of money there. For many, it's a stepping stone. If it wasn't for Wilfried Zaha, I'm not sure they'd spent much the last decade in the Premier League. So it's really interesting he would go there. The performance he's getting out of some of these guys, and lose Elise after that end of season run, huge loss.
Yeah,
to do what they're doing is incredible. I just wonder what happens next. Everyone is using Palace as a stepping stone, understandably so, and I think that's part of the deal. And I think it's a better deal than what they were doing previously. You can't hold on to these players, get 3 years out of them. I think that's always got to be part of the conversation. If you're good enough, we'll sell you. If not, then you haven't been good enough, and that's your fault. So
can I bring up one negative thing though? Can I bring up one negative thing? I didn't like that Glasner went back to Dean Henderson. And I know this will come across as like a U.S. Homer thing with Matt Turner being benched again.
Because Matt Turner's not very good.
Yeah, maybe. But I would say Arne Slot didn't go with Alisson. Arne Slot didn't go with Alisson in the Carabao Cup final.
But who's his number 2?
Kelleher.
He's really good. And Matt Turner is
U.S. number 1. Started at the World Cup.
I think he should be in the squad.
He'd probably start at West Ham.
You really are a homer. Right, speaking of home, let me ask you about MLS this weekend. Some interesting stories. We're into week 6. I suppose the big story I wanted to ask you is LA Galaxy. Like, what is happening with LA Galaxy start of this season? I know we've done this a couple of times now. The champions of last season, and you watch them again this weekend. I know Ricky Pucci's out. There was some mucky
Joseph Paintsil out.
Paintsil out. Some of Varas' comments about the Orlando penalty were a bit like, I thought earlier on of you don't get this reference, but it always comes to me, Kenneth Williams in the film Carry On Cleopatra. Infamy. They've all got it in for me. He's playing Julius Caesar, getting stamped at the time. It's a whole thing. It sort of felt a bit like that. Like, everyone's got it in for me. Yeah, I'm in a bit of trouble. What do you make to it?
Joveljic being sold effectively to Sporting Kansas City, Paintsil being out, Ricky Pucci. You can throw Brugman, who was the MLS Cup MVP. Jalen Neal. I mean, this was a team that has 0 GAM. I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the negative GAM. They went all in on last season. There's some concern. They got hot at the right time. It was us versus them, led by Ricky Pucci. And they've got some goalkeeper, Mitrovic and thinking about John McCarthy. Both have made tremendous mistakes that have been points worthy dropping. They're struggling, man. But again, as I say this, the year previous, LAFC at an MLS Cup final in Columbus started the season without 5 starters on the roster and 2 more substitutes off the roster. So 7 players. My math isn't great from pass or fail Cal State Fullerton, but that's 7 guys that played significant minutes in an MLS Cup final that weren't on the roster. So we all have a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, a 1-year plan, and then you get kicked in the face and you have a 0-year plan. And I feel as though that's where LA Galaxy is. Now, that being said, we saw this week CF Montreal fire Laurent Courtois, Marco Donadel, Italian international, took over. They looked fantastic. I called that game in Chicago. Today, announcement of Sporting Kansas City mutually parting ways with Peter Vermes, the longest tenured head coach in MLS. They've taken just 1 point in the first 6 matches. And for Greg Vanney, you wouldn't think that he would be in trouble after winning an MLS Cup, but they are in trouble right now. And whether that's psychologically, that's physically with the players on the field, or that's just LA Galaxy, it's who they are in 2020. We've seen teams win MLS Cup trophies and not make the playoffs the next year. We've seen teams make deep runs in CONCACAF Champions League and not makes the playoffs that year. Toronto FC, a perfect example. Sporting Kansas City, a perfect example. God forbid LA Galaxy follows in those footsteps. One would think that Greg Vanney would be in trouble. But for Will Kuntz right now and Greg Vanney, they've got to get this back on track as soon as possible. And whether that's moving out players that they currently have, or it's trying to figure out ways to be more nimble in this market that is the nuclear arm spending. And Phil Anschutz and company effectively spent around $27 million last year on this roster. They've got to figure it out and figure it out fast, because right now teams after 6 matches are really starting to pull away. There's still, momentum's a crazy fickle conversation. 3 games, 9 points changes the trajectory of a team, but you don't want to be going into the summer in, 10 to 15 points off the pace. That's significant numbers to try to make, especially in a very complicated Western Conference.
I mentioned last week I took the weekend off and put my phone in a cupboard, so I didn't know that Thiago Motta had been sacked. Well, this had not happened whilst I was on air earlier today. I've been really busy for 3.5 hours. I didn't realize Peter Vermes had gone until you just said it. I didn't know. I hadn't checked the news since I was on earlier, so that's brand new information to me. So what's give us more on that?
Yeah, so longest tenured manager, 17 years, I believe. He was head coach at Sporting Kansas City. He won an MLS Cup trophy as a player with Kansas City Wizards, became the general manager after he retired, fired Kurt Anolfo, who was the last manager. The last time there was a managerial change, they were called the Kansas City Wizards, and they were playing in the baseball stadium next to where their incredible stadium is right now. He and Caleb Porter, going into the weekend, head coach of the New England Revolution, they had 1 win in their last 16 matches going back to last season. I don't like to bring form of the previous season into the conversation. I use it as a data point for both managers. I believe their last win coincided on August 24th, I believe. 1 win, missed out on the playoffs, start of the season. Caleb Porter got 2 goals from Carlos Gil, 3 points, first time this year. Sporting Kansas City lost on the road at FC Dallas. It felt like this was coming. I think there could have been a conversation of maybe Pete trying to go up and be more of a figurehead behind the scenes. They elect to go in opposite directions. Kerry Zvagnin, who's been his trusted number 2, takes as an interim head coach. I wrote down names and guys that are available. Adrian Heath, Bob Bradley, Giovanni Savarese, Tata Martino, Josh Wolf, Jim Curtin, Vanni Sartini, Gary Smith, all managers that are available currently. There were 12 managerial changes last year, but the changes didn't start till May. Now you have 2 sackings, and we're not even out of March with Montreal and Laurent Courtois and Sporting Kansas City and Peter Vermes. This, to me, is an acknowledgement of growth, that ownership is looking at managers and saying, I don't care how many years left is on the salary compensation. I believe Peter has 2.5 more seasons. So they're going to take a big hit on what they owe him, but they feel the necessity and the timing is now. So it's a huge, huge decision. We were kind of feeling it, the momentum. You kind of knew it was coming, but the problem is Peter has literally built this club. He was a part of the building with ownership of building the training facility, which is extraordinary. The building of the stadium itself, highly influential, and maybe more importantly, from Sporting Kansas City to the academy structure, to the web that is Sporting, and it could be Sporting Alabama or Sporting North Carolina.
Mm.
This is Peter Vermes's methodology, his coaching methodology that's included. So I thought if you're going to make this move, you do it in the offseason because you have to kind of untangle the spider web that is Peter Vermes because the insulation of him and his staff is significant. So you got to pay him off. You have to pay the staff off. You have to go with a sporting director. Like this is going to be, if you hire someone like Adrian or Gio or whoever, they're going to want to come in, but they are also going to want to come in and untangle the loyalty, if you will, to Peter Vermes because he's deservedly so created this infrastructure that is built around everything that he's been about. So this is a big decision, and I'm really intrigued to see how long they give Kerry Zavagnin, who, by the way, on multiple occasions has been like persona 1A for a lot of these different clubs around Major League Soccer to try to go get. But he was so comfortable in the system of Peter that he elected to stay. So, yeah, really fascinating, really interesting times in Kansas City.
Yeah, big story. Totally missed it.
Yeah.
Thank you for bringing me up to date.
I got you, bro. I got you.
You got me. Thank you. Listen, before we get to heroes and villains, the other bit I was going to mention with MLS is I'd never given any thought to Minnesota United, like ever in my life. I don't think before.
Eric's flying.
Absolutely flying. But so they got my attention. Here's why their clubs do social media. They're on the Blue Sky. I'm not using the fascist one. I'm using Blue Sky for posting. And Minnesota United, one of the few clubs that actually on Blue Sky. I think the Bundesliga clubs are, but not many Premier League clubs are, and not all the MLS clubs are. Yeah. But there was a great post that Minnesota United did, right? Which was heartbreaking. The King of Spain is stripping Real Salt Lake of their royal title for that performance. Yeah. And it's like a painting of the King of Spain from the 12th century. Just tremendous. Everything about it is great. Yeah. From the housery of it, the Dunsethery of it. Sorry, Tim, I guess. Yeah. Sorry, Tim. The picture they used to do it, the fact they're acknowledging that Real Salt Lake is the worst name in football history, all of it together. They should be called the Lakes. I don't know why. Just come on, obviously.
No, they're united in Minnesota. Yeah, they're just united.
But just everything about it. Danny, just briefly, top Blue Sky banter.
Yeah, no, it's great social media banter, and you see it on Instagram, on Twitter, X or whatever, on Blue Sky as well. Sometimes you'll even see it on TikTok. I think we're seeing an evolution of kind of this next generation that understands how to utilize in a fun, bantering way, how to make fun of maybe the insecurities. You know, sometimes you'll get like the LAFC logo on a hat. You'll get clubs that will create it. So like if they lose, it'll like break and fall. And like, you know, like all these different, it's very creative. Like sometimes they'll use like different movies or different songs or whatever. Credit to Minnesota United. They got him. They laid into it. RSL taking the L. Tani Oluwaseyi, great double. Looked like it was freezing fucking cold in Minnesota. Sorry, Tim. With the rain and the puddles and everywhere. I was in Chicago. Thankfully, I got out. Tio Max and I got out before tornado watch at O'Hare Airport happened later in the afternoon. So yeah, the fun fake spring that's happening all over the United States right now. I'm expecting, by the way, tonight another like 6 inches of snow at the house when it was 80 degrees yesterday here in Salt Lake City.
That doesn't make sense. What?
We call it a false spring.
As I keep saying, it's not fit for human habitation, America. Anyway, let's get to some heroes and villains of the weekend. I'd like to start with one because I'd love to see what you think about it. It's players that leave Man United and get good.
I knew you were going to do this.
You knew I would.
Bastard. Sorry,
You knew I would. But we can share it. Mainly because, not just to dig at you, I loved watching Marcus Rashford this weekend. I know it's Preston North End, but like, it wasn't just the fact he's been playing well. Like, I saw him play against Chelsea recently when they turned it around. Asensio scored twice. Their link-up is really good. I think we talked about it a couple of days after. But like, he looks happy. He looks confident. And I thought the first goal is that really great, classic, you know, cut back, pass it in the net goal. But the penalty, super confident, stuttering run up that I hate, I know, but the fact he did it, incredible confidence, sends the keeper the wrong way, puts it in. He looks fantastic. And just like that element of, like Adrian said to me today on the show about some love him or hate him. And I'm always baffled that anyone could hate Marcus Rashford. Like he fell out of form and, you know, his private life for some reason, he's other people's concern. Oh, he flew to Ireland or whatever. Like, we'll never know what's happened. I don't think we're going to get the Rashford book at some point, but like, just obviously a really good guy and someone that lost love for the game, to go back to a kind of theme of today's program,
Yeah.
rekindled it at Villa at the right club at the right time with the right manager. Love to see that this weekend. And
Yeah.
Anthony playing for Betis, they won the derby against Sevilla for the first time apparently in like 7 years. I
Cucho
don't know.
scored. Cucho scored. Yeah.
Cucho scored, which is why it
Yeah.
sort of drew my attention as well. He was on Adrian's shoulders, which also drew my attention, waving a flag in front of the Betis fans. And there was a great quote from Isco after the game, who said, "There's no way that Betis could afford to keep Anthony next
Mhm.
season. We would love to. Is there any chance the club could use the fans to crowdfund an extension to his contract for another season?" Which I thought was great. They want him so
Yeah.
much, they're going to try and crowdfund him staying. So just two great stories, Danny, really.
Yeah, I mean, a footballer just needs 200 grand a week to live in Spain. I mean, why not? Let's just have the fans pay for it. Oh. Um, my hero, I love the Rashford one. I'll never understand people that root aggressively for people to fail, especially since we don't understand the context. And maybe it's just a falling out. Maybe it's the simplicity of that. Maybe it's behind the scenes. Maybe it's a breaking of a relationship. But it does feel like very Jay Lings, very Jesse Lingard at West Ham,
Don't
where it
go
was a
back.
good thing for him to get out and get away from the city of Manchester. I went for, and I don't know if you saw this, there's a referee in Peru
Mhm.
that had shown a red card. And this referee's red card was not well received by a player of this, or excuse me, a member of the staff
Right.
down in Peru. The referee's name was Luis Allegri. And after he had shown a red, because he and his linesman, there was a player that was, angry and looking for revenge. In the
No.
82nd minute of Sport Huaquia, the Copa Peru match in Magdalena, in the Ancash version north of Lima, um, the referee, Mr. Allegri, decided
Yeah.
to put his boot with a flying sidekick karate into the face of an onrushing member of the support staff of the team who had gotten a red card.
What?
He's not I don't believe he's fantastically trained in martial arts, but with the right boot connected to the underjaw of an unnamed individual on the team staff that was running with a bottle to swing it at the
Oh,
referee. And the
fair enough.
referee said, no. Sorry, Tim. I would like to show you the bottom of my right cleat. And when you watch the video, he literally, hiya, right foot kick extension, perfect lean bend, caught this guy underneath the chin, wipes him off his feet, bottle getting ready to be swung, lights out. So to you, Mr. Allegri, I tip my cap.
Yeah, I didn't know where that was going. That was incredible. That was an amazing tidbit. I didn't know who was the villain, who was the hero. All I know is I haven't seen it and I want to see it. A rubbish kung fu kick to a support staff member who was running at him with a bottle.
Yeah.
I,
You know
what
what
a
I would have
joke.
done if I was there? I would have been like,
Run.
in the face.
Oh,
Oh, in the
I wish I was there. Just briefly, I'll give you a villain. We're a little bit over, but
I got
my
one too. I got one too.
Okay, we'll do one each. My villain is anyone that had a problem with the Newcastle parade. We mentioned it earlier on in the
Yeah.
program. Like,
I didn't think you would go here.
I think normal people aren't
Yeah.
bothered about it. Like, but I think social media people who are still
Yeah.
on the fascist website or whatever, wanted to make a big furore of it because, like, Newcastle have not won a domestic trophy in 70 years. And like because I was drawn in, of course, by being there. I mentioned a couple of weeks ago on the show, seeing families crying about the concept of seeing it. Look, they're owned by the Kingdom of Saudi
Look
Arabia.
at you melting.
We could
softy.
absolutely get into all of that at some point. It's why I'm wearing the black and white jumper today, I guess.
So soft.
I'm now like a Newcastle fan, but like, apparently there's 150,000 people on the streets.
Incredible.
People are climbing lampposts like it's the 70s, multi-generational support. People, like I read on the BBC, were flying in from all over the world to be there at the parade. There was massive banners. You could see what it meant to Bruno Guimaraes. TV stars and Deck were constantly on stage, like
Yeah.
all of it. I just thought it was great. And I thought it was, Alan Shearer, the Premier League's best ever striker, but famous for being a Newcastle fan, was talking about his emotions of it all and how he never thought he would experience something like it. And there's something about the the births, marriages, and deaths of it all that has captivated me, I think. And I really enjoyed it. And I also enjoyed when the sun set and you've had a full parade of 150,000 people going through this city of like one club. You look to the sky, expecting a firework display. What did you get? A drone show of Alexander Isak in drone form scoring the winning goal at Wembley, and the ball of drones coming away from drone Isak's foot into the back of the net could be seen across the entirety of the city of Newcastle that night. So I did genuinely love it. And that's why I want, Palace, Villa, or Forest to win the FA Cup. More of this and less, well, not as good as the trophies we won last year. Like, crap, all that, bin it off.
Well, there's going to be one idiot that's going to be out there 9 months from now telling us that, yeah, that night, that's when you were born. It's going to be like Kerry for Carabao Cup, or
nice.
They're gonna figure out some stupid,
or Alexandra.
Oh, there you go. Yeah,
there you go.
There you go. Are you K with a carry, or are you C with? Oh, whatever. It doesn't matter. My final tidbit. Did you know the movie 27 Days Later, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Cillian Murphy, everything. Well, they're coming out. They're coming out with a new one. 27 days, 28 days, whatever, one of the two.
They're coming 28 days, then 28 weeks days. Is the
now they're going to do 28 years.
Oh.
They're coming out with a new one that's coming out. The reason why I tie this in, because I don't know if you were watching Bologna against Venezia.
No.
But there was a player named Jens Odegaard, the 25-year-old, who is number 21 in our hearts and minds. And there was a little bit of a concern for him during the match because he had something on the back of his neck. And on X, one of the alarmed supporters for Bologna said, "Is that a tattoo or a shark bite on the back of Jens Odegaard's neck?"
What's it look like?
DAZN started freaking out over this and getting close-up shots. And somebody followed up with, interesting view of Jens Odegaard. Did his neck get scraped, or was he just bit by a zombie?
What?
And it picked up it literally looks like someone bit him on the back of the neck.
I haven't
It's
seen
like
this.
a circular. I'll send it to you. Send it circular. Just search Jens Odegaard. Or excuse me, Odegaard. ODGAA.
Well, you'll have to send it, mate, because you can't even get the name right.
Jens.
Yes.
JENS.
Yes.
Odegaard. ODGAARD. At Bologna.
Oh, I'm looking at it. What is this?
So, what is this thing? A zombie bite? Like everybody's
it's like a big red circle.
So I thought initially, like, oh, it's got to be one of those cupping. You know, when people go get the cupping, and it draws out all the shit out of your body. Sorry, Tim. So he wrote, Jens felt the need that he had to address this because it was gaining so much steam, and everyone was having fun joking. Yeah, is it a zombie bite? Was it a shark bite? He said, "Sorry, guys, it's just medicine I'm using for my neck. Nothing serious." Well, Jens, it looks pretty fucking serious. Sorry, Tim.
That doesn't clear it up in any way. It's just medicine I'm using for my neck. It's just a bite from a neighbor.
What happened? It is a huge, it looks like someone is taking a full glass, like a full glass, and slammed him in the back of the neck with it, where it looks like bite marks and blood marks. It's very circular. It looks like he's been burned. Like that blood is falling out of his body. Like teeth have pierced the back of his neck. Bologna, Odegaard, ODGAARD, number 21. Gross.
Yeah, that's weird. That's super gross. And the cleanup did not work, metaphorically and literally, I guess, and figuratively. Danny, we're out of time. Long show, great show, always a pleasure, never a chore. We'll be back with more Week in the Tackle next week.